Hello, my name is Alex Jensen. I'm a PhD student at Clemson University in the Forestry and Environmental Conservation Department. I'm going to be summarizing a project my lab group has been working on for the last 2 years with the goal of making field experiences more inclusive. I'd first like to acknowledge my co-authors on this project, particularly Sara Bombaci, who's now an assistant professor at Colorado State University. So attracting and retaining diversity has become a priority in STEM. And this research is timely because many organizations and departments are currently looking at themselves in the mirror in this context. In the environmental and natural resource sciences, field experiences, which we define as temporary real-world field-based internships, are critical for professional development. They've been shown to improve academic metrics like graduation rates and GPA scores, provide skill development, and improve self-efficacy, students' sense of identity as a scientist. Because of these links, field experiences are critical for retention in our field. However, there are some barriers to participation that make these opportunities less accessible to some people. Pay is notoriously low in the environmental and natural resource sciences, and other barriers include long or non-standard work hours, lack of accommodations, and discrimination and/or unwelcome work environments. If we look at representation, 10% of participants in field experiences are racial/ethnic minorities, compared to 40% of the US population. And studies have estimated that LGBTQ plus folks are underrepresented by 17 to 21% in STEM generally. So our core question for this research was, what do students prioritize when seeking field experiences, and how does that change with identity? Our objectives were to, number one, quantify how much students needed to be paid, and then two, compare those pay needs to how much jobs we're currently paying. Objective 3, identify other priorities for students like desired study species, skills, locations, and organizations they wanted to work for. And lastly, number 4, to identify barriers that limit participation. We created a survey which asked students about the minimum monthly salary they would need for a full-time 3-month field position. We also asked about other preferences like study species/taxa, location, and employers, and about other barriers to participation. And then we had a whole section on sociodemographics at the end. We sent this survey to students enrolled in environmental science, natural resource, and biological science departments nationwide. For analysis, we used a generalized linear model with the minimum monthly salary as a response variable and demographics such as race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexuality, and disability status as the predictors. To assess the landscape of pay, we recorded all temporary full-time jobs posted on 9 natural resource job boards during a 3-week window. We noted how much they paid or how much they cost, and whether housing and/or vehicles were provided. We classified these positions into 4 categories. Pay to work were positions that cost money. Unpaid were those that were strictly volunteer with no extra cost. Underpaid were those that paid less than minimum wage. And paid positions were those that paid at least minimum wage. On to results. 42% of respondents said their level of income was a barrier to their academic career. And the average hourly salary students said they needed was $8.68 an hour, which is higher than federal minimum wage. Racial/ethnic minority respondents needed over $2 more than average, $10.80, while cisgender female/non-cisgender respondents needed $1.30 less than average. And I'm presenting results from the racial, ethnicity, and gender because those came out as significant predictors in our analysis. So there's going to be a lot going on with this graph, so I'm not showing the data yet on purpose. This graph is going to show a comparison between how much jobs from the job boards paid and how much students said they needed, with few demographic groups highlighted. So starting with the x-axis, there are 6 wage benchmarks from the average wage that jobs below minimum wage paid, $4.44 an hour. Next is minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, up to the wage needed to retain 90% of applicants, $20 an hour. The percent below the salary is what percent of jobs paid at least that amount. So 83% of jobs paid at least $4.44, 73% of jobs paid at least minimum wage, and so on. The y-axis is the proportion of applicants who said they could afford to work for the following wages. Purple bars are the average respondents, orange bars are non-white respondents, gray bars are cisgender female / non-cisgender respondents, and blue bars are respondents whose annual self-generated income were between $10,000 and $20,000. Not surprisingly, very few people can afford to work for below minimum wage, and particularly few $10,000 to $20,000 income earners. At higher pay rates, non-white respondents were consistently less retained at every wage benchmark. It's not until $20 an hour are 90% of non-white respondents retained in the applicant pool. Beyond just pay, we asked respondents to rank 6 factors when considering field experiences. Shorter bars indicate a higher mean ranking. We found that skills training was consistently ranked highest, even above salary. Location and study species / taxa were ranked similarly, followed by employer. We asked students to specify what skills they wanted, and the most common answer was technical field skills, followed by analytical skills, professional development, and research skills. This is showing which study species / taxa respondents wanted to work with. The most common answer was mammals, followed by multiple species from different categories, birds, plants, marine mammals, and so on. This is showing a breakdown of where students wanted to work. Relatively equal proportions preferred to be close to important family members, close to school, or some other U.S. location. A smaller proportion preferred to work internationally. Regarding preferred employer, most students wanted to work for the government, about 1/3 less for NGOs, and relatively few respondents wanted to work for other types of employers. These are other barriers that respondents faced to field experiences. Pay was the most common barrier, even though we specifically asked if there were other barriers we hadn't asked about. Other common answers were season or timing, work or school responsibilities, lack of transportation, family or care commitments, and others, which you can see here listed. So let's wrap this up. The first take home is that we have strong evidence that we aren't paying enough, and paying more will attract a more diverse applicant pool and help with retention of underrepresented people. Low pay is a systemic problem in our field, yet Fournier and Bond outlined several strategies for improvement, including allocating adequate funds for technicians and grants, greater flexibility by funding agencies to include salaries, increased discussion about the reliance on underpaid labor, and a commitment by the community to refuse to advertise underpaid positions. Second, students value training in skills even higher than salary, and they especially wanted experience with technical skills, analytical skills, and professional development. Study species was important, and the most common preferred taxa was mammals. And many students wanted to work in a school or family, in addition to some other U.S. location. 3, diversity is not enough. We must be inclusive and think about what barriers exist to potential applicants. So in a nutshell, what do students across diverse backgrounds need? Pay above minimum wage, preferably at least $20 an hour, skills development, flexibility in species / location, and inclusive / supportive environments. In addition to my collaborators, I'd like to thank the Wildlife Society and Clemson University for funding, Clemson University alumni and Nathan Mooney for pre-testing the survey, the cadets at various departments for distributing our survey, and several lab members for assistance with project development. Thanks for your attention.